Hey there. Ready to unlock some serious procurement power? Today we're diving into procurement models, practical strategies for small to medium-sized companies. It's a guidebook, actually, that's packed with actionable insights just for you.
Yeah, it's like having a secret weapon for, securing the best deals, strengthening your supplier relationships, and ultimately gaining that competitive edge we all crave.
And music to my ears. Okay, so let's kick things off with a concept that might sound kind of simple, but it's absolutely foundational, the push-pull inventory strategy. So picture this. You're running an online store. Do you pack your virtual warehouse to the brim based on, I don't know, hunches about what might sell? Or do you kind of wait for those orders to roll in before stocking up? That's essentially the push versus pull dilemma.
And for small and medium-sized businesses, this decision, it isn't just about logistics, right? It's about protecting your capital. And the guide really drives this point home, tying up funds in inventory that's, gathering dust. It's a recipe for disaster.
Right. Cash flow is king. And the guide actually uses a brilliant example. Imagine an e-commerce business that sells custom-built electronics. These are high-ticket items with a limited customer base. So holding a ton of inventory doesn't make sense. They use a pull strategy, only ordering components when a customer makes a purchase.
Smart move. But on the flip side, they also offer, everyday phone accessories. Those are in constant demand, right? So
Yeah.
they use a push strategy to keep those virtual shelves stocked and keep those customers happy.
So it's all about finding the right balance for your unique business, right? So think about your own products or materials. We're
Yeah.
talking about like consistent necessities or those one-of-a-kind specialties. That distinction can really make or break your inventory strategy.
Absolutely. Now let's shift gears from inventory to kind of like your overall strategy. Have you ever heard of Porter's generic strategies?
Yeah.
It sounds a bit academic, I know, but trust me, this framework can be a game changer when applied to procurement.
Porter basically gives us three paths to stand out from the crowd, right? Cost leadership, differentiation, and focus.
And the cool thing is, these strategies directly translate to your procurement decisions. Are you obsessed with like snagging the absolute lowest prices? That's cost leadership in action. Maybe you're all about sourcing those like rare, high quality materials that make your product sing. That's differentiation.
And let's not forget about those businesses that are laser focused on a niche market. Their procurement strategy needs to reflect that sharp focus, ensuring they're sourcing the perfect materials for their unique audience.
Precisely. The guide even gives some real-world examples to, bring these strategies to life. Let's say you're in manufacturing and you need raw materials. To win on cost leadership, you might explore sourcing those materials internationally where prices are more competitive.
Right? Or imagine a small business specializing in, I don't know, organic skincare. Their brand is built on purity and quality. They're not going to compromise on ingredients just to save a few bucks. Instead, they'll prioritize sourcing those premium, eco-friendly ingredients, even if it means a higher price tag.
And that higher price tag is often justifiable because it aligns with their brand and resonates with their target customer.
Exactly. It's all about strategic alignment. Now, let's be honest, not every product or supplier deserves the same level of attention, right? That's where the Boston box, also known as the BCG matrix, comes into play. This model helps you prioritize your procurement efforts for maximum impact.
Think of it like this. You've got a star athlete on your team, someone who's consistently exceeding expectations. They deserve the best resources, the best coaching, the best support.
Absolutely, you're going to invest in their success.
Exactly. And in the Boston Box world, those star athletes are your star products or services. They're the high growth, high market share rock stars that are driving your business forward. For these stars, you want top tier suppliers, reliable contracts, and a procurement strategy that keeps those supply chains humming.
Now, you also have your reliable players, those who consistently deliver solid performance without stealing the show. In the Boston Box world, we call them cash cows. They might not have that explosive growth potential, but they're the steady earners that keep your business afloat.
And your procurement strategy for your cash cows might focus more on, maintaining those steady relationships and ensuring cost effectiveness rather than like aggressively seeking out the newest, shiniest supplier on the block.
So far, so good. But we've got two more quadrants to unravel in the Boston Box. Question marks and dogs. These names aren't exactly as inspiring, are they?
Question marks are like those promising rookies, tons of potential, but also a lot of unknowns. They could become your next star player or they could fade into obscurity.
So you wouldn't want to go all in with a long-term exclusive contract with a supplier for a question mark product just yet, right? What if it flops?
Exactly. The guide suggests opting for more flexible or short-term agreements when dealing with question marks. This allows you to test the waters without overcommitting. Now, the dogs are a bit trickier.
Let me guess. Dogs are like those players who've been on the team for a while. They're loyal, but their performance just isn't what it used to be.
That's a great analogy. Dogs represent those products or services that are in low-growth markets, and they might be dragging down your overall performance.
So does that mean you give those dog suppliers the boot?
Not necessarily. It's about evaluating those relationships. Is there a way to revitalize them? Can you renegotiate terms to improve profitability? Or is it time for a strategic parting of ways?
The Boston box really forces you to make those tough decisions, doesn't it?
It does, but those decisions are crucial for allocating your resources effectively and ensuring that you're investing your procurement energy where it matters most.
Okay, next up is a classic for a reason, the SWOT analysis. Now, this one's all about taking a good, hard look in the mirror. It's not about, like, beating yourself up over past mistakes. It's about being honest about your strengths and using those to your advantage while also acknowledging those weaknesses so you can, well, make them less weak.
Right. A SWOT analysis in procurement is like a business checkup, right? First, we look at what's working well internally. Those are your strengths. Maybe you've built, rock solid relationships with your suppliers, negotiated some killer contracts, or maybe you have a procurement process that's so streamlined, it would make a Swiss watchmaker jealous.
Okay, so those are things to celebrate and leverage. But what about those internal areas that might need a little TLC? Those are the weaknesses we need to acknowledge.
Exactly. Are you plagued by, I don't know, long lead times from certain suppliers? Are your procurement costs, eating into your profits more than you'd like? Are you overly reliant on a single supplier for a critical material? These are the vulnerabilities that keep procurement managers up at night.
And this is where a SWOT analysis can be a lifesaver. By identifying those weaknesses, you can start to strategize about how to mitigate those risks.
Absolutely. And now a SWOT analysis isn't just about looking inward, right? It's also about understanding the external landscape, those opportunities and threats that are swirling around us.
Opportunities are those exciting possibilities just waiting to be seized.
Mm.
Maybe there's a game-changing new technology that could revolutionize your whole procurement process.
Or perhaps there's an untapped market where you can find, innovative new suppliers or materials that'll give you a competitive edge.
And then there are those external factors that, let's be honest, we have less control over.
Yeah.
The threats.
Think about those market price fluctuations for key materials, those global supply chain disruptions that seem to pop up out of nowhere, or even, changes in regulations that could impact your entire industry.
The guide gives a really compelling example of a small electronics company that relied heavily on a single supplier. They had a great relationship, everything was smooth sailing, but then
That reliance on a single source became their Achilles heel. When that supplier faced, unexpected production issues, the electronics company was left high and dry. Their entire production line, it grinded to a halt.
that's a procurement nightmare. What do they do?
They learned the hard way that, diversifying their supplier base was essential. It wasn't just about, getting the best price anymore. It was about creating a more resilient supply chain that could weather those unexpected storms.
So the takeaway here is to be proactive, not reactive. Don't wait for a crisis to expose those weaknesses.
Precisely. Okay, ready to kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture?
Always. What do we have in our toolkit for that?
It's time for a PESTLE analysis. PESTLE stands for Political, Economic, Sociocultural, Technological, Environmental, and Legal Factors. And think of it like a weather map for your business environment, specifically for procurement.
I love that. So we're talking about those macro environmental forces that, let's be honest, often feel completely out of our control. How can we possibly prepare for all of that?
Well, it's not about, controlling the uncontrollable. It's about understanding those external forces and kind of factoring them into your decision making. For example, let's say there's been a major shift in, trade policies between your country and a region where you source a lot of materials.
That could throw a wrench into your whole operation.
It absolutely could. But with a PESTLE analysis in your back pocket, you're more likely to be aware of those changes and can, adjust your sourcing strategies accordingly. Maybe you start exploring alternative suppliers in more favorable regions, or you factor those potential tariffs into your pricing models.
So knowledge is power.
Absolutely. Let's dive into a few more of these PESTLE factors. Economically, things like, inflation, currency fluctuations, even recessions, these can all impact your purchasing power.
And we can't forget about those sociocultural trends. Consumer preferences are changing faster than ever these days, and ethical sourcing is no longer a nice-to-have. It's a must-have.
It's true. Consumers are more aware than ever of where their products come from and the impact those choices have on the environment and society.
So it's not just about getting the best price anymore, right? It's about sourcing responsibly and aligning your procurement practices with your values, which I'm guessing ties into the environmental factor in pestle.
Absolutely. We're talking about climate change, resource scarcity, the whole nine yards. These are huge issues that are impacting supply chains worldwide. A pestle analysis prompts you to consider things like your company's carbon footprint, the sustainability of your materials, even the environmental practices of your suppliers.
It's about looking beyond the bottom line and considering the long-term impact of your procurement decisions.
Exactly. Now, on the technology front, we're talking about, advancements in procurement software that can automate tasks and give you, better visibility into your supply chains.
There's also blockchain technology, which has the potential to, like, revolutionize transparency and traceability in procurement.
Imagine a world where you can track the journey of your materials from their origin all the way to your warehouse, ensuring, ethical sourcing and responsible practices every step of the way.
That would be a game changer. Okay, last but not least, we have the legal factor in pestle. This one can get a little hairy, am I right?
It can. We're talking about navigating the complex world of, I don't know, import-export regulations, product safety standards, labeling requirements, all of which can vary significantly from country to country.
The guide uses the example of a food distributor who sources specialty ingredients internationally.
They have to be on top of everything from food safety regulations to labeling requirements in multiple countries, ensuring that they're in compliance every step of the way.
That sounds like a logistical nightmare, but it highlights just how crucial that L in pestle can be. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. From analyzing our internal strengths and weaknesses to scanning the horizon for those macro environmental trends, it's clear that strategic procurement requires a holistic view.
Absolutely. Now, are you ready to roll up your sleeves and dive into some practical sourcing strategies?
Bring it on. What do you have in store for us? So we've analyzed our business inside and out. We've scanned the global landscape for opportunities and threats. Now what? How do we actually put all this knowledge into action when making those crucial sourcing decisions?
That's where the sourcing gemstone model comes in. It's like having a treasure chest of sourcing strategies, each one a facet of this gemstone, ready to be deployed depending on, your specific needs.
Ooh, I love a good treasure analogy. The guide highlights two of these facets as being particularly valuable for, small and medium-sized businesses. Let's start with volume concentration. What's that all about?
Okay, so imagine you're scattering pebbles across a pond, right? Not much impact, right? But what if you gather all those pebbles and you throw them as one? Now you're creating waves.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. So instead of spreading your purchases across a bunch of different suppliers, you consolidate those purchases with fewer suppliers to gain more leverage.
Exactly. The guide uses a great example of a small manufacturing business that was buying office supplies from multiple vendors. They were practically throwing money away. By consolidating those purchases with just one supplier, they were able to negotiate a bulk discount and streamline their ordering process.
That's a win-win. It simplifies their operations and saves them money.
Exactly. Now, the other gem in this model that I think you'll appreciate is joint process improvement.
This one sounds a lot less transactional and a lot more collaborative.
That's the beauty of it. Instead of viewing your suppliers as, just vendors, you approach them as partners, working together to find ways to optimize processes, reduce waste, and ultimately improve outcomes for both parties.
I love that. Could you give us an example of how this might work in practice?
Absolutely. Let's say you're a food producer who relies heavily on a specific supplier for your raw ingredients. By working collaboratively with that supplier, you might discover opportunities to streamline, delivery routes, improve packaging to reduce waste, or even experiment with new, preservation techniques to extend the shelf life of those ingredients.
So it's about leveraging each other's expertise and finding those win-win solutions that benefit everyone involved.
That's what makes joint process improvement so powerful. It transforms those, transactional relationships into strategic partnerships that can drive innovation and create a more resilient supply chain. Okay, ready for one more model before we wrap things up?
Get me with it.
Let's talk about Porter's 5 forces. Now, this model is often used to analyze, competition within an industry, but here's the cool part. It can also be incredibly insightful for making smarter sourcing decisions.
I'm intrigued. How so?
Well, let's focus on two of those forces that are particularly relevant to procurement: supplier power and the threat of substitutes. Supplier power is all about understanding how much leverage your suppliers have over you.
So if I'm like completely reliant on one supplier for a critical component and there are no other viable alternatives, that supplier has me over a barrel, right?
Exactly. They could, jack up prices, dictate unfavorable terms, and you'd have very little recourse. The guide gives this cautionary tale of a bakery that sourced its flour from a single supplier. They were at the mercy of that supplier's, pricing whims and delivery schedules.
That's risky business. What can they do to regain some control?
That's where understanding the threat of substitutes comes into play. Are there alternative materials or suppliers that could meet their needs just as well? Could they, I don't know, explore using locally sourced grains?
That's a great point. It's not always about finding the cheapest option. It's about knowing what your options are and using that knowledge to strengthen your negotiating position.
Exactly. By, diversifying their supplier base or even exploring alternative ingredients, the bakery could reduce their reliance on that single supplier and regain control over their costs and their operations.
This is eye-opening. It's like learning a new language, the language of strategic procurement.
I love that. And the final model we'll explore today, the Ansoff matrix, is all about using that new language to think strategically about, growth and expansion.
Okay, bring on the growth. How does the Ansoff matrix fit into the procurement puzzle?
It encourages you to think outside the box when it comes to, your sourcing strategies. Are you sticking with the same old suppliers and materials, or are you exploring new possibilities that could unlock growth and innovation?
So instead of just trying to optimize what we're already doing, it's about asking what else is out there.
Exactly. The guide shares a great example of a clothing company that decided to venture into sourcing sustainable fabrics from a new geographical region. This strategic sourcing decision not only aligned with their values, but also led to the development of an entirely new product line, opening up new markets and attracting a whole new customer base.
Wow, that's incredible. So by thinking strategically about their sourcing, they were able to drive innovation,
Yeah.
expand their market reach, and even enhance their brand reputation.
Precisely. The Ansoff matrix reminds us that procurement isn't just about, cutting costs. It's about making strategic choices that can fuel growth and propel your business forward.
We've covered so much ground today, from inventory management to global market trends to strategic sourcing strategies. It's clear that procurement is so much more than just a back office function. It's a critical driver of business success.
It's about being proactive, thinking strategically, building strong relationships, and always being on the lookout for opportunities to, optimize your supply chain.
For our listeners who are eager to put these models into action, what's one piece of advice you would offer?
Don't feel overwhelmed. You don't have to implement every single model we've discussed today. Choose one that resonates with, your current challenges or goals and start there. Experiment, iterate, and see what kind of impact you can create.
That's perfect advice. Well, there you have it, a crash course in procurement models designed to equip you with the knowledge and